Welcome back to Globewise Entertainment, where the cameras never stop rolling, and neither do the secrets. Today, we're diving deep into the dark underbelly of classic cinema with 10 banned films that didn't just ruffle feathers, they haunted old Hollywood for decades. These weren't just movies, they were scandals, sparks for censorship wars, and sometimes, career enders. From forbidden love and taboo topics to political backlash and moral outrage, these films pushed the limits, and paid the price. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. Join the Globewise crew for weekly deep dives into the stories behind the silver screen. Let's uncover what Hollywood tried to hide. 1. M. 1931. The controversy. Fritz Lang's M is a landmark in film history, but when it was released in 1931, it caused an uproar. The chilling story of a child murderer, played by Peter Lorre, was unlike anything audiences had seen before. It was dark, disturbing, and relentlessly suspenseful. For the first time, a film depicted a child killer in a way that made viewers both sympathize with and fear the criminal. In addition to its shocking premise, M's stark realism and use of sound, including Lorre's famous whistling, pushed the boundaries of what was considered acceptable in cinema. It was a gritty portrayal of the moral ambiguities of crime and punishment, which alarmed both censors and the public. The fallout. The film's subject matter was deemed so taboo and unsettling that it was banned in several countries, including the US and parts of Europe. The portrayal of a child predator was considered not just controversial, but dangerous, something that could corrupt society's morals and stir panic. Lang's chilling use of suspense and psychological horror was too much for the standards of the time, and as a result, many theaters refused to show M despite its critical acclaim. The film was almost wiped from existence in certain markets, and its themes were too dark for a world still recovering from the horrors of war. The legacy. Today, M is regarded as a masterpiece of German expressionist cinema. It broke new ground in filmmaking, particularly in the crime genre. Peter Lorre's performance as the murderer has become iconic, and Lang's direction was ahead of its time. The film influenced later filmmakers like Alfred Hitchcock and is considered one of the earliest and best examples of psychological thrillers. Even though M was banned and nearly destroyed by moral outrage, it is now hailed as one of the most influential films in cinematic history, showing that sometimes the most shocking films leave a lasting legacy. 2. The Devils, 1971. The Scandal. Ken Russell's The Devils is the kind of movie that leaves you gasping, and sometimes recoiling, at the sheer audacity on screen. A historical drama based on the true events of the 17th century Loudun possessions in France, the film depicts a disturbing mix of religious fervor, sexual violence, and political corruption. The most controversial part? The nuns. In one of the film's most infamous scenes, a group of nuns is seen engaging in highly sexualized behavior under the influence of demonic possession, leading to the public outcry that the film was too blasphemous and morally corrupt for any reasonable audience. Why it shook Hollywood. The sheer audacity of Russell's approach, combining religious hysteria, kinky sexual imagery, and political commentary, was more than Hollywood could handle. The film's graphic depictions of exorcisms, orgies, and madness pushed the boundaries of what was acceptable for a mainstream film. Add to that the fact that The Devils starred Oliver Reed and Vanessa Redgrave, both delivering performances so intense that they seemed to physically burn through the screen, and it was no wonder the film was too hot for audiences and critics alike. Upon its release, The Devils was heavily censored, with key scenes, particularly the sexually explicit sequences involving the possessed nuns, cut or blurred in many countries. In fact, it was banned outright in several places, and the studio was pressured to make multiple edits to appease the censors. It was considered too scandalous and dangerous, a film that could easily destroy careers if it were to gain too much traction. The aftermath. Despite being buried by the censors, The Devils has slowly gained a cult following, with many now praising it as a daring and profound examination of the intersection of religion, politics, and power. Its forbidden nature has only added to its allure. Today, it's often hailed as one of the most daring films ever made, a masterpiece of excess, madness, and social critique. The Devils may have been buried under controversy, but over the decades, it has managed to claw its way back to the surface as a film that couldn't, and shouldn't, be forgotten. Its chaotic blend of eroticism, violence, and historical insight is the stuff of legend, and it remains a testament to the power of cinema to both shock and provoke. 3. Intolerance, 1916. The film, Intolerance, directed by D.W. Griffith, is often hailed as one of the greatest films of all time, yet it was also one of the most controversial and nearly destroyed Griffith's career. The film is an epic, weaving together 4 separate storylines across history: the fall of Babylon, the crucifixion of Christ, the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre, and a modern-day story of injustice and social intolerance. The problem: while the film was ambitious and visually groundbreaking, featuring intricate set designs, lavish costumes, and large-scale battle sequences, the themes of social injustice and intolerance hit too close to home for some audiences. At the time, many critics felt the film's handling of social issues was far too radical. Some scenes, particularly the portrayal of religious intolerance, were considered dangerously inflammatory. The film's overt political commentary and its criticism of social and racial inequalities sparked fierce debates and led to censorship. The fallout: though Intolerance was revolutionary in terms of filmmaking technique, its controversial subject matter and the sheer length, nearly 3 hours, meant it was not well received at the box office. The film's political and social commentary pushed the limits of what Hollywood was willing to portray, and it faced significant censorship. Even after its release, many felt the film was too ahead of its time, unable to find the mainstream acceptance Griffith had hoped for. The film's mixed reception financially, combined with the public outcry over its provocative themes, led to Griffith's fall from grace in Hollywood. Intolerance was not only banned in some cities but also failed to secure widespread distribution, marking a serious turning point in Griffith's career. The movie's political charges were so controversial that it contributed to the backlash against him, even though Griffith had been one of the most influential filmmakers of his time. Legacy: despite its initial reception, Intolerance has since been recognized as a masterpiece of cinema. It pushed the boundaries of filmmaking and storytelling, influencing future filmmakers and cementing Griffith's place in film history. Its themes of human suffering, injustice, and social change are more relevant than ever, making Intolerance not just a relic of a turbulent time, but a timeless reminder of how powerful films can challenge societal norms. 4. The Man with the Golden Arm, 1955. Directed by Otto Preminger. Starring Frank Sinatra. When The Man with the Golden Arm hit theaters in 1955, it didn't just challenge audiences, it challenged the entire Hollywood system. Frank Sinatra played Frankie Machine, a jazz drummer and recovering heroin addict trying to stay clean after a stint in rehab. At the time, drug addiction was one of Hollywood's biggest taboos, strictly off-limits under the Motion Picture Production Code. So what did director Otto Preminger do? He released the film without the code's seal of approval, making it one of the first major studio films to defy censorship openly. The result? Total chaos. Theaters hesitated to screen it. Religious and civic groups condemned it. But audiences? They were captivated. Sinatra's performance earned him an Oscar nomination and helped legitimize addiction as a serious subject in American cinema. More importantly, the film cracked open the door for more mature, realistic storytelling in Hollywood, and helped pave the way for the eventual collapse of the restrictive production code altogether. What once was banned became historic. 5. The Story of Temple Drake, 1933. The Scandal, based on William Faulkner's Sanctuary, The Story of Temple Drake was one of the most controversial films of its time, and for good reason. It tackled taboo subjects like rape, abduction, and moral decay, all wrapped in a Southern Gothic setting. Miriam Hopkins played Temple, a wealthy young woman who falls into a nightmarish spiral after being assaulted and held captive in a brothel. Why it shook Hollywood, audiences were stunned by the film's boldness. The story didn't just hint at sexual violence, it practically screamed it, pushing boundaries the public wasn't ready for. Religious groups and moral crusaders called it degenerate, and many theaters refused to show it. The backlash was so intense that it became one of the major catalysts for Hollywood's infamous production code, which would censor American cinema for decades. The fallout: the film was banned in several cities and nearly erased from history. Paramount took heat for ever producing it, and Hollywood studios got scared straight, leading to stricter self-censorship across the board. Temple Drake didn't just rattle cages, it helped build the cage that would contain Hollywood for the next 30 years. Legacy: though buried for a time, the film has since been re-evaluated as a bold, even proto-feminist work that dared to portray trauma and survival in a time when such topics were taboo. It's now seen as a turning point, where the silver screen got a little too real for the era. 6. Reefer Madness, 1936. In the heart of the 1930s, as America was gripped by moral panic and a thirst for order, a low-budget propaganda film emerged from the shadows, and unintentionally became one of the most infamous cult classics of all time. Originally titled Tell Your Children, Reefer Madness was commissioned by a church group to warn parents about the so-called dangers of marijuana. But what began as a cautionary tale quickly veered into the absurd. The film showed clean-cut teens spiraling into chaos after just one puff of cannabis, leading to hallucinations, madness, manslaughter, and even suicide. Audiences were horrified. Not by the drug, but by the film itself. Its exaggerated, melodramatic tone made it feel more like unintentional comedy than serious warning. Despite this, it was banned in several states, condemned by critics, and labeled too exploitative and hysterical for educational use. And yet, the real twist? Decades later, Reefer Madness would be resurrected, not as a warning, but as a joke. Rediscovered in the 1970s during the counterculture era, it became a cult hit among stoners, students, and midnight movie lovers, who howled with laughter at its wild overreactions and campy delivery. What was once meant to scare America straight ended up becoming a satire of itself, and a shining example of how moral panic can backfire spectacularly. In trying to bury the film, Hollywood accidentally turned it into legend. 7. The Children's Hour, 1961. The Scandal. At first glance, The Children's Hour looked like another prestige drama starring two of Hollywood's brightest stars, Audrey Hepburn and Shirley MacLaine. But beneath the surface was a topic so taboo for 1961 that the film stirred massive controversy: lesbianism. Based on Lillian Hellman's 1934 play, the story revolves around two female schoolteachers whose lives are destroyed when a student accuses them of having a romantic relationship. While the original play was already banned in many places in the 30s, the 1961 film pushed boundaries by daring to even hint at same-sex love on screen. Why it shook Hollywood. Even though the film was subtle, never explicit, never sensationalized, it was still way ahead of its time. The production code, which had long banned any reference to homosexuality, was cracking, but not gone yet. As a result, The Children's Hour faced bans, edits, and heavy pushback from theaters, particularly in conservative areas. Critics were divided. Some praised it for its bravery and heartbreaking performances, others condemned it as immoral or disturbing. The legacy. The film didn't destroy careers, but it cracked open a door. It was one of the first American mainstream films to treat queer themes with serious emotional weight. It laid the groundwork for future stories that would take those themes even further. Today, The Children's Hour is seen as a quiet, tragic, and important step forward in Hollywood's slow, painful evolution toward LGBTQ+ representation on screen. 8. Gilda, 1946. The film that smoldered its way into trouble. Gilda, are you decent? Me? Sure. I'm decent. That single line, delivered with a sultry smirk by Rita Hayworth, was enough to send moral watchdogs into a frenzy in 1946. Gilda wasn't just a film noir, it was dangerously sexy for its time. Hayworth's striptease to Put the Blame on Mame didn't involve nudity, but the implication? Off the charts. The censors didn't officially ban it, but they sure tried to strangle its reach. Several cities refused to show it. Moral groups protested. The Catholic Legion of Decency gave it a big thumbs down. Why? Because Gilda was a woman in charge of her sexuality, and that terrified 1940s America. Ironically, the controversy only fueled its fire. Hayworth became a World War II pin-up queen, and Gilda became a timeless symbol of old Hollywood glamour and rebellion. Bottom line, Gilda wasn't banned everywhere, but it broke the rules everywhere it played. And Rita? She didn't just play the femme fatale, she redefined her. 9. Unien Analoo, 1929. Directed by Luis Buñuel and Salvador Dali. Why it was banned: surrealism, dead animals, dream logic, and that ice-slicing scene. This wasn't just a film, it was an artistic Molotov cocktail. Created by two of the most rebellious minds in art history, Unien Analoo opens with a razor blade slicing through an eyeball. No context, no setup, just instant shock. Running just 21 minutes, this French surrealist short film became one of cinema's most infamous experiments. There's no plot, no logic, and no boundaries. The goal? To completely destroy narrative filmmaking and assault the audience's expectations. Hollywood reaction: pure panic. Distributors refused to touch it. Censors were baffled. The Catholic Church nearly combusted. Though it wasn't made in Hollywood, its shockwaves reached American studios, who saw it as a direct threat to traditional storytelling. Fallout: banned in several countries and widely condemned, but it became a secret rite of passage for artists, filmmakers, and rebels alike. It didn't just shake Hollywood, it challenged the entire idea of what a film could be. Today, Unien Analoo is hailed as a surrealist masterpiece. Back then, it was a cinematic crime scene. 10. The Wild One, 1953. What are you rebelling against? What I got? That single exchange turned The Wild One into a symbol of post-war youth rebellion, and one of the most controversial films of its time. Marlon Brando, leather-jacketed and sneering, led a biker gang into small-town America and straight into the heart of Hollywood censorship battles. Released in 1953, the film terrified moral watchdogs. Its portrayal of lawlessness, gang culture, and anti-authority attitude was seen as dangerous, especially in a time when conformity was king. Brando wasn't just acting, he was the rebellion. His performance became a blueprint for every outsider character that followed. The backlash was swift. The Wild One was banned in the UK for 14 years, considered too incendiary for public viewing. In the US, it was heavily criticized by parent groups, religious organizations, and local censors. The fear wasn't just about bikers, it was about the cultural shift they represented. Yet despite, or because of, the outrage, The Wild One carved its place in cinematic history. It helped define the counterculture movement and cemented Brando as an icon of cool. Today, it's not just a movie, it's a cultural landmark. One that proved, sometimes, a film doesn't have to be violent or explicit to shake a nation. It just has to challenge the status quo. And that wraps up our dive into the secrets, scandals, and banned films that haunted the golden age of Hollywood. These weren't just movies, they were lightning rods that exposed the cracks beneath the glamour. If you're into forgotten film history, hidden gems, and the stories Hollywood tried to bury, make sure you hit that subscribe button and join the Globewise Entertainment community. We've got plenty more behind-the-scenes drama and cinematic deep dives coming your way. Thanks for watching, and remember, the real stories are sometimes stranger than the scripts. See you next time.